Welcome to another FPL video. This is going to be the preview, and so much has happened obviously since the last video, and that's why I like to do kind of a video later on in the week where we can discuss any kind of breaking news that has happened. And of course the big news is Lukaku got injured against Malmo. Thomas Tuchel pretty much immediately ruled him out of game week 9 against Norwich, which is what we all kept him for or brought him in for. So I'm going to be talking about that, how that changes my team selection and my transfer plans, what I'm going to do about that situation, and then I'm going to be talking about the 5 best captains for the week, the best free hit team you can make for game week 9, and much more. So without further ado, let's head straight into the video. So the initial plan was to captain Lukaku, to be honest, but now obviously there's no chance, and Salah now could really be the main guy to captain. He would have maybe been a bit of a differential before for those considering the captaincy on the Egyptian, but now I think a lot of people are just going to go to him, or maybe some new signings like Harry Kane or Jamie Vardy, who knows, Heung-min Son as well in the midfield. So it kind of, I'd say, opens the horizon a little bit more, and I'll be talking about the best captains later on when kind of looking at the best fixtures and all of that. And to be honest, with this kind of news, the main thing now for me is to replace Lukaku, and probably for a premium striker. I still want to have that premium spot. I think it's a good balance, and it just gives you that flexibility to downgrade or upgrade to pretty much anyone you want. And Lukaku, obviously you'd want to have him for the next few game weeks with those really good fixtures against some of the worst defences, but unfortunately he could be out for several weeks. Obviously we don't know anything yet. He could just be out for this game week and then he'll be back. But still, at his price point, you just want to get rid, in my opinion. But of course, everyone's different, and arguably, I could just play Livramento or Saka if he's fit instead of Lukaku and keep him and see what happens. So I think the best course of action would be to wait for the press conference, and then if we get any further information, that's when we can make a final decision on Lukaku. But still, I would suspect he's out for at least 1 or 2 game weeks, and that's enough for me. And to be honest, I'll show you now some of my transfer plans. It's very simple, nothing groundbreaking. I have actually enough money just about to get Harry Kane, so I'd have 0 million left in the bank. And another thing I could do, of course, which is going to be a very popular transfer this week, is to get Jamie Vardy in. And that might be, I'd say, a no-brainer. Jamie Vardy has got some good fixtures up until game week 19. Kind of mixed bag for the next few, that's the thing. And with Harry Kane, the fixtures are really good from game week 12 onwards. But Vardy's got the form, he's even got the stats, and he's overperforming his stats, but the stats are actually pretty good compared to some of the years gone by where he still did really well. So I think it's going to be between those 2 English strikers, and to be honest, I am leaning more towards Jamie Vardy at the moment, but Harry Kane is someone I would love to have in my team as well. But if I do get Jamie Vardy instead, it gives me more money to invest in the rest of my squad, and potentially at some point I could actually get Son in the midfield as well ahead of those game week 12 fixtures. To do that actually though, I'd have to make a few downgrades. So one of my City defenders, maybe Diaz to a Duffy, and then Azpilicueta to Christensen, or maybe Chilwell or Reece James. That's what I'd have to do in order to facilitate Son in the midfield as well as having Vardy up front. And I just think that's a really good kind of partnership. Still having a City, Chelsea and Liverpool defender. But of course, I would rather have Azpilicueta or Rudiger over any other of the Chelsea defenders. But unfortunately, in terms of budget, I would have to do that in order to get Son in my midfield. So that's why I'm very tempted to get Jamie Vardy up front, because it gives me the money and also just the needs to get Son in the midfield. I wouldn't want to double up on Spurs' attack despite how good their fixtures are from game week 12. So that's kind of my plans at the moment. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I put a poll out yesterday and over 200 of you voted, so thank you very much. And the majority, over 60%, said Vardy is the best replacement for Lukaku. The other options were Kane, who had over 20% of the vote, and then we had Jimenez, Aubameyang with pretty much less than 10% each, and also other options that people would be discussing like Tony. They were commented down in the comment section, so obviously really appreciate all the feedback, and I have to agree, to be honest. I think Vardy and Kane are the standout replacements, and if you do want to have a budget striker, Tony would be my favourite. So it's a difficult situation we're in, and obviously anyone who doesn't have Lukaku will, I'd say, be in a very good position, or in a very fortunate position as well. But you know, that's how FPL goes. Sometimes it will go against you and sometimes it will go for you. But with these kind of updated transfer plans, whoever I bring in from Kane and Vardy, I might be tempted to captain And if not, it will be Mohamed Salah as the captain, and then one of my new additions will be the vice. But yeah, I just want to use one free transfer, and then hopefully, have 2 free transfers heading into game week 11. But obviously, the plan was to hold the transfer this week, even if Saka was injured, and then make 2 free transfers potentially, or at least have it there in the back pocket heading into game week 10, and maybe bring in Mbumo, for example, out of Brentford's good fixtures. So that's kind of my plans at the moment. And now let's look at some of the fixtures. So Arsenal against Aston Villa. That should be a good game, to be honest. But I'm just not trusting the Arsenal assets in this game. Ramsdale, Ben White, even the attackers like Saka. Let's see if he's fit, of course. This video is recorded on a Thursday, so let's wait and see if we get any more news. But honestly, I'm not too I'd say, impressed by the Arsenal assets. I think Aubameyang, he's got a really good home record this season, and he scored in 3 successive games at the Emirates, and I think he could do the same against Aston Villa. He did score twice against them 2 seasons ago in a 3-2 victory. Maybe not to the same degree, but I think he could do well. I included him in my best free hit team for game week 8, and he did get 9 points, so he was good there. I think he could do well against Aston Villa, but I think Ings and Watkins could cause some trouble, and Martinez could be, I think he's just going to be well up for it and wants to get a clean sheet against Arsenal. So that's a game I'd like to avoid for the captaincy, for example. But if you do have an Aubameyang, I think he could be a good punt. And then Chelsea against Norwich. I'm going to be talking about this very shortly with the top 5 captains for the week, but I think a few of the kind of best options come from this game. And whoever plays, I think, in that left wing-back spot against Norwich, I think will have a lot of joy, whether it's Chilwell or Alonso. Chilwell has just played 3 games in a row. He did start against Malmo, so you would think that Alonso would start against Norwich, but we just don't know that. But whoever or whichever left-back you have, stick to them, because they could do really well. And if you get rid of them, you might be kicking yourself. And the same goes for Kai Havertz now. With Timo Werner potentially out and Lukaku, Thomas Tuchel wasn't very optimistic about both of them. I think that Havertz could play in that striker role like he did against Crystal Palace last season, and I think he could do really well. So Havertz is one to look out for as well. And then Crystal Palace against Newcastle, Conor Gallagher, Edouard, even Michael Olise. Some of these players are looking well poised for a good return against Newcastle, who could still score, by the way. I'm not too sure about having Gaeta or a Palace defender for this game, but having their midfielders and attackers definitely a route. I definitely recommend that. I think Gallagher could be really good for this one. Everton against Watford. Obviously, Watford did come up against one of the best teams in the world in Liverpool, but still very poor. They were playing 3 at the back, really, when they don't even have 3 centre-backs available, which was very strange from Ranieri, but he wanted to be defensive. They still lost 5-0. And Everton, I think Townsend could be really good here, and also Damari Gray. It looks like Calvert-Lewin is still going to be out, so that is a bit of a concern. But let's wait and see, what other updates we get from Rafa Benitez. Same with the rest of the managers in the Premier League. And I think that is a good thing for Andros Townsend, who should still be on most set pieces, including penalties. But with Richarlison, let's wait and see what happens there. But this is a really good fixture, I think, for the Everton assets, despite Doucouré being injured. And of course, that is going to be a big blow. I think Everton will struggle more so than obviously if he was playing. But still, I think Everton should have enough to win this game. And their assets are definitely captainable, potentially, if you want to go for a differential. And then Leeds against Wolves. This is a kind of tough game to call, but based on recent form, you'd have to back Wolves a bit more. I still think Rafinha can do well, but a lot depends on Patrick Bamford. A lot depends on the other kind of injuries that Leeds have, and they've just been really poor this season. So Wolves, I'd back them for the win. I wouldn't captain any of their players, but I'd be a bit optimistic about Jimenez. He should be starting now. Obviously, he was rested, or at least didn't start in game week 8 because he played literally just less than 2 days before against El Salvador. And then Southampton against Burnley. This is an interesting one. And actually, I'm not too confident of a Southampton clean sheet, but having Livramento starting isn't the worst thing in the world. And Broca obviously started. He got the goal, the Chelsea loanee. So he's someone to look at. And then obviously with Burnley, they've been really poor defensively, offensively, in all departments, but especially at the back. And I think they're a team to target. I wouldn't captain any Southampton player, but I wouldn't mind having an Armstrong or a Broca, depending on who starts there. It probably will not be Armstrong, to be honest. And then Brighton against Manchester City. This could be a bit of a tighter game than we expect. And I think that Manchester City, they have so many options, of course. So De Bruyne is a really good captaincy shout, but the problem with him is that he could have a really good game, City win 3 or 4-0, and he's not really that involved because it could be Bernardo Silva, Foden. We know all of the names they have by this point. Gabriel Jesus should be starting here. Mahrez started the last 2 games. wasn't very good against Burnley, to be honest. He had a pretty poor performance. So you'd expect Jesus to slot back in there. Of course, we don't know that just yet. It is Pep Guardiola after all. I think Foden can do really well. Even though City lost last year at the Amex, Foden was really good in that game and got some goals. So I think Foden could be a really good choice for this game week. So if you have him, enjoy him. Obviously, I would expect him to start, but once again with Pep, let's wait and see. Let's not jinx anything. And then with Brighton, of course, you probably wouldn't want to have any of their assets heading into this game, whether it's Sanchez, Cucurella even, Veltman, Duffy. They have so many options, by the way, at the back, and then Malpai up front. Then looking at the Sunday games, a really good Sunday we've got here. Brentford against Leicester, that should be an interesting game. I think Tony and Mbeumo could do well here. Even if Brentford lose or draw, it doesn't matter. I think they could get 1 or 2 goals against Leicester, who are one of the worst defences in the league this season. But Brentford, meanwhile, are one of the best. But I'd still expect Leicester's attack to have too much, really, for Brentford just to keep a clean sheet. I think Vardy could do well, and also Kelechi Iheanacho. But then we have the issue of Patson Daka, who scored 4 goals in the Europa League, which is absolutely insane. So that kind of puts another spanner in the works. And just imagine if Leicester started all of those 3 strikers, that would be carnage. But yeah, I think they have so many options, Leicester up front. I think that first goal for Daka against Manchester United, that could be the catalyst. And of course, 4 goals later on in the week, a very good week there for the former Salzburg striker. Now we look at West Ham against Spurs. What a game that should be. I mean, Antonio could do well, even Benrahma, and then Son and Kane, they should be back to form. But what I would say with Harry Kane is that, yes, he had a really good performance against Newcastle, but it is Newcastle. So let's take it with a pinch of salt. Of course, when Kane tends to get off the mark, he goes on a really good run. But let's wait and see first before jumping the gun and saying Kane is back and he's the best asset once again. I think there still needs to be a bit more consistency, and he needs to prove himself a bit more this season before we can say that. But of course, I'm not saying you shouldn't buy him. I'm not saying he's a bad option. I'm just saying to be a bit more cautious rather than just jumping the gun. But I think he could do really well this week, to be honest. He's got a great record against West Ham, and I think this could be a high-scoring game. Neither side are really good defensively, but both attacks are very impressive, and I think it could be a 2-2, a 3-2 thriller. Of course, you never know. It depends on how these managers approach the game, but this could be, one of the best games of the season. And then Manchester United against Liverpool. I mean, wow, this is literally on paper, such a great game to watch. And then we've got Salah, of course, in the form of his life. The fact that he's scoring in every single game in the Champions League, in the Premier League. I think that's 9 games in a row now. He would make it 10 if he scores against Manchester United. And United actually are one of the worst defences over the last few game weeks in terms of expected goals conceded, in terms of shots conceded. And their performances have been very poor. Even against Atalanta, very fortunate, to be honest. Obviously, great comeback, great fighting spirit. But their defence is awful. They concede so many chances. And if they play in that same way against Liverpool, you'd expect the Reds to annihilate them, to be honest. But I don't expect that to happen. I think United will be a bit more, I'd say, tactically astute and a bit more aware. And I think they could do a good job here. Cristiano Ronaldo, of course, he's pretty much all of his goals have been very important, whether it's, getting off the mark and opening the account of the game and putting United in the lead, or equalising, or a late winner. He's doing it all. So he's scoring the clutch goals. But will Ronaldo have enough, or will United have enough to overcome Liverpool? I don't think so, but you never know, to be honest. It's going to be a big game, 2 fierce rivals, and it should be a good one. Trent, I'm not too confident about him this week. I think United could score, but still, Trent has that attacking potential. You probably wouldn't want to bench him for this game. Jota probably won't play. It should be Firmino's spot to lose. And with Manchester United, to be honest, I don't expect them to play this kind of 4-2-4 that they did against Atalanta, but I still think that most of these kind of strikers and players that they had in their starting lineup, I think they will be pretty much unchanged, really. Maybe 1 or 2 changes in the United team from midweek, and that should be as good as new. So that's kind of a brief overview of all of the fixtures, what I think, and some of the key players to highlight. And now I'm actually going to talk about the top 5 captaincy options. And I mean, it's going to be a bit weird. Some of these options might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I completely understand that. But looking at Chelsea against Norwich, I think Kai Havertz playing in that striker role, I think he could do really well. Of course, he's been very disappointing this season, and I thought after he scored against Arsenal, scored against Liverpool, and also in the Champions League final last year, I thought he would kickstart and keep on pushing on. But of course, not everyone's career trajectory is just simply going up, up, up. There's going to be bumps in the road. But I think Havertz now, with the absence of Werner and Lukaku. He could be the main man up front. Although just once again, a bit similar to De Bruyne earlier, I think that Chelsea can still score from so many different avenues. Their defenders, their wing-backs, anyone can score. So maybe it won't be that simple as Havertz plays up front and gets the points. Maybe it won't be that way, but I think he will start, and I think he is well poised for some good returns. And then speaking of, De Bruyne, I think he is the fourth best captaincy shout this week. But then again, it could be whoever plays from Jesus or Mahrez, and also Phil Foden, who I highlighted earlier. I think he could be a really good choice. So I think a City attacker could be the one to go for. Even Joao Cancelo potentially, but will he start? I mean, to be fair, he's starting every single Premier League and Champions League game. And Brighton could still nick a goal, although you would expect City to keep the clean sheet. But I would say De Bruyne or Foden would be my picks in number 4. So a City attacker here against Brighton. They have won here a few times 5-0. I don't expect that to happen again. Graham Potter has got Brighton very solid and well organised. But still, I think that this could be a good win for Manchester City. In number 3, this might be a bit controversial as well. I was talking about Brentford's good attacking or defensive stats, should I say. But Vardy, in my opinion, is still a really good choice. And I think he could reward owners as soon as they bring him in. Obviously, that's 4 consecutive returns for him, as opposed to Lukaku's 4 consecutive blanks. I think Vardy's a really good one. But of course, if you're not really feeling Vardy, then go for either Son or Kane. I think they could do really well against West Ham, even if they lose 3-2. I still think that if Spurs score, it will be down to those two. But for me, Vardy would be my number 3 pick, because I wouldn't be too surprised at the same time if West Ham dominate that London derby, just like, Spurs were pretty poor against Crystal Palace, against Arsenal and Chelsea. I wouldn't be surprised if West Ham won 3-1 or 2-0 and, Kane and Son don't really have a sniff. But with Brentford versus Leicester, I expect Leicester to score at least a goal. I'd be very surprised if they didn't, despite how good the Bees have been in defence. So I would probably say Jamie Vardy in 3rd position. I know it's a bit unorthodox. And then a number 2, despite Lukaku's injury, I still have him in number 2. It's Mohamed Salah. And yes, maybe he should be number 1. But Manchester United still, it's a really tough game. He doesn't have the best record against them. But, with Salah, that doesn't really come into the equation. The kind of form he's in, records don't matter, simply put. But still, I think he is one of the best captaincy options. He is the most informed player in the world. And he can score goals from any type of avenue. Same with assists. He's got, the underlying stats are just absolutely amazing. Expected assists, he's up there. Expected goals, shots in the box. You name it. You check all the stats. He is pretty much at the top or near the top for every single number. So for me, Salah is a kind of a no-brainer. You could just captain him. I might captain him in the end, to be honest. But of course, let's wait and see. I will be confirming my team in future live streams and all of that. So don't you worry. But Salah for me is the 2nd best captain. And the reason why is because in number 1, I've got Chilwell or Alonso, whoever starts in that left wing-back spot. Who do I think is going to start? I think it will be Marcos Alonso. But then again, I did say that against Brentford and he didn't. So you just don't know with Tuchel. Whoever you have from those 2 left-backs, maybe, if you're not kind of sure if they're going to start, don't captain them. But if you do have a good feeling about them starting, I would put the armband on them, because they can get a goal or an assist, some bonus points from doing so, and also the clean sheet. So that could be a mega haul in itself. And it's a great differential captain. And I think that could put you above anyone who captains Salah if he does blank. But that's obviously not looking too likely at the moment. So that's kind of my top 5. What would your top 5 be? Let me know down in the comment section below. Of course, I realise I'm leaving some players out. You can't include everyone. Even Aubameyang against Aston Villa, he could be decent. Maybe Gallagher or Edouard against Newcastle. You just never know. So let me know who you would go for. And to be honest, there's so many different choices this week. And the Lukaku injury has kind of opened things up. So on screen, what you see here is, in my opinion, the best free hit team you can make for Game Week 9. And I'll be honest, I'm not too sure about the goalkeepers, but you could go for Ederson, maybe Ramsdale if you back Arsenal for a clean sheet. I, to be honest, don't. That's why I've got no Arsenal players really, especially defenders and goalkeepers. I've gone for Ederson. I think City will keep a clean sheet against Brighton. But then again, I wouldn't be too surprised if the Seagulls do notch a goal. But I think Ederson and Cancelo, for example, that could be a really good double up. So if you are free hitting this week, I would go for that. And then at the back, obviously, it depends on who you think is going to start at that left wing-back spot. I think it's going to be Alonso. If not, you can go for Chilwell. And I think Azpilicueta, that double up would be really good. Azpilicueta should definitely start. He's so nailed. And he's got the most points of any player for Chelsea since Tuchel has taken over. So I would go for that double up in defence. Alonso or Chilwell and also Azpilicueta. This is on a free hit, of course. And then Cancelo with Ederson complementing him. And if you want to go big at the back and, you know, have 4 in there, then you can go for Luca Digne. But that guy is such a troll. And Watford can still score, to be honest. So I'm not that confident in Everton keeping a clean sheet, so you can always just downgrade him to maybe a cheaper defender and then invest the rest of your money into your midfield and attack. Livramento, I think, is the perfect budget defender this week. He's got a good fixture, as opposed to Duffy, who has Manchester City, so I would go for Livramento there. But ultimately, what I would do is start Alonso, Azpilicueta and Cancelo as a back 3. And then looking at the midfield, I would have Kai Havertz in there. I think he could do really well this week. And, you know, he could be well poised for some great returns. Phil Foden, if you can't afford De Bruyne like I can't here with this team, then I would actually go for Phil Foden. I think he could do really well. And to be honest, I have a good feeling about him over the next few weeks, assuming he does start, of course. Rafinha against Wolves, maybe you can go for someone else, to be honest. Maybe Gallagher. I was talking about him quite a lot. But yeah, I think maybe you could just go for Gallagher instead of Rafinha. But still, I think Rafinha's kind of form this season, especially for Brazil, has been so impressive. So I would go for the Brazilian. And then Brownhill is just kind of a budget option. Don't worry about him. And then either Townsend or Gray. It's up to you who you go for. I'm going for Townsend because if Calvert-Lewin is out, which it looks like he will be, I think Townsend could be on penalties, on set pieces, and also he's just going to be the kind of main goal scorer for Everton, or at least the kind of main goal contributor. And then up front, to conclude this team, we've got Jamie Vardy. I put him 3rd in my captaincy list. Maybe that's a bit too high, I can admit that, but still a really good option, I think. And Brentford have a good defence, but Vardy has been sensational this season, to be honest. The 34-year-old is aging like a fine wine. And then we've got Edouard, who scored against Arsenal, scored against Spurs. In the other games, he did blank. But still, I think Edouard could be really good here. And he did start really against the Gunners because Zaha was missing out. But the way Palace played and Edouard's performance, I would be very surprised if he was dropped. But if you're not too sure, then go for Gallagher in midfield and go for another striker, maybe Mikel Antonio, who I still think could do really well this week. But just to have someone a bit different, I've gone for Edouard. And then to conclude this team, we've got Harry Kane. Once again, take it with a pinch of salt. I would rather have Son over Kane long term, I'll be completely honest. But for this fixture against West Ham, I think Kane is probably a bit better poised. I think just the positions he occupies will cause West Ham more trouble than Son. But then again, you know, I think both of them could do really well here. And Kane has a really good record against the Hammers. That's what kind of settles it for me in this best free hit team. But once again, I must stress, I think Son is a better option than Kane because he is cheaper. And in terms of the midfield, we don't have too many options that are reliable like Salah, but Son is. And then up front, we've got Jamie Vardy, Ronaldo, Lukaku when he's fit, Jimenez, Antonio, Tony, etc. So we have more to choose from, I think, in the attack with fewer positions available. But still, I'll go with Harry Kane here, and that is the best free hit team for Game Week 9. So what do you think of the best free hit team? What would you change? There are a few kind of, I'd say, players that could be subject to change here. This is just kind of, I'd say, a general structure and targeting some of the key fixtures and players. But that's just kind of my opinion. Let me know, of course. There's no right or wrong. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. Really appreciate all the support. A lot of subscribers, interaction and all of that in the last few days. So really appreciate it. And good luck with Game Week 9, of course. What are you going to be doing about Lukaku? I probably will be moving him on to Vardy or Harry Kane. That is something I'm yet to decide. And of course, feel free to offer your thoughts on my kind of transfers in the comment section down below too. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you want, Dylan_RCM. I am active on those platforms and I engage with everyone who tries to contact me there. And you can also send in your teams. And whenever I do a rating your team or rating your wildcard video, you can feature in that. So thank you very much for watching this video. Really appreciate all the support as always. And I'll see you next time.